It's easy to assume that if a man cares about you, he'll find a way to be present in your life. While this is true to some extent, it doesn't account for the internal conflicts that might prevent him from reaching out. A man's decision to retreat is often less about his feelings for you and more about his ability to navigate those feelings. He might care deeply about you but feel unprepared to handle the responsibility of a relationship. His silence is not an indication that he doesn't value you. It's a sign that he's grappling with his own limitations. Understanding that distance doesn't equal rejection requires a shift in perspective. It means recognizing that his withdrawal is more about his journey than your actions or worth. It means accepting that his silence is a reflection of his internal struggles, not a judgment of your value. This perspective doesn't make his actions any less painful, but it can help you separate his behavior from your sense of self-worth. Taking his distance personally can lead to unnecessary self-doubt and insecurity. You might find yourself overanalyzing your interactions, questioning your choices, or doubting your ability to connect with others. But the truth is, his silence is not a mirror of your flaws. It's a manifestation of his own fears, doubts, and struggles. By recognizing this, you can free yourself from the burden of trying to fix a situation that isn't yours to fix. When a man pulls away, it's natural to want answers. You might feel tempted to reach out, seek closure, or ask for an explanation. But it's important to remember that his silence is his choice, and chasing after someone who's withdrawn can often backfire. Instead, focus on maintaining your sense of self-worth and independence. Recognize that his behavior is not a reflection of your value, but a sign of his own internal conflict. This distance can feel like rejection, but it's often a necessary part of a man's journey. By stepping back, he's given himself the space to confront his fears, address his insecurities, and figure out what he truly wants. This process might be messy and confusing, but it's a vital step in his personal growth. His retreat doesn't mean he doesn't care about you. It means he's trying to make sense of his own feelings and priorities. Understanding this dynamic doesn't mean excusing his behavior or waiting endlessly for him to figure things out. It's not your responsibility to fix him or guide him through his struggles. But it does mean approaching the situation with empathy and compassion, recognizing that his silence is not a reflection of your worth, but a testament to his own inner balance. When a man distances himself, it's not a rejection of you as a person. It's a reflection of where he is in his life and his ability to handle the complexities of a relationship. By reframing his silence as a sign of his own journey rather than a commentary on your value, you can navigate the situation with clarity and confidence. Instead of internalizing his withdrawal, focus on maintaining your own sense of self-worth and independence. Recognize that his behavior is not about you, it's about him and his journey towards self-awareness and growth. When someone likes you but doesn't reach out, it can lead to endless questions, doubts, and assumptions. One of the most overlooked yet significant reasons behind such behavior is fear. This isn't the fear of you or anything you've done, but rather a fear deeply rooted within the person themselves, a fear of vulnerability, rejection, failure, or even success. This fear can be so paralyzing that it prevents action, even when the feelings they have for you are strong and genuine. To understand this dynamic, it's important to look at what fear really means in this context and how it shapes behavior, often leading to silence instead of the connection they truly desire. For many, vulnerability is one of the scariest things to face. Liking someone requires exposing parts of yourself that are often hidden, your emotions, your desires, your insecurities. For a man who has spent a lifetime guarding stuff, being open can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff. He might admire you, care about you, and even dream of being with you, but the thought of opening himself up to the possibility of rejection or criticism can feel unbearable. Vulnerability means risking being misunderstood and not being enough. And that's a risk not everyone is ready to take, even when the reward is potentially life-changing. This fear of vulnerability is often compounded by past experiences. If a man has faced rejection or heartbreak before, those memories can linger like shadows, affecting how he approaches new relationships. He might remember the pain of putting himself out there only to be met with indifference or disappointment. That memory can become a barrier, whispering doubts into his mind whenever he feels drawn to someone. Even if his feelings for you are strong, the scars from his past can hold him back. making silence feel safer than risking another emotional wound. It's not that he doesn't like you, it's that his fear of repeating the past is louder than his hope for a different future. Rejection is another powerful fear that can stop someone from reaching out. No matter how confident a person might seem, the possibility of being turned down can create a hesitation that's hard to overcome. That liking someone means placing your emotions in their hands, hoping they'll handle them with care. But what if they don't? What if you misread their signals and their response is cold or dismissive? These are the kinds of questions that can plague someone's mind, creating a cycle of overthinking that leads to inaction. Instead of risking rejection, they convince themselves that it's better to stay silent and hold on to their feelings privately. Interestingly, the fear of success can be just as paralyzing as the fear of failure. Liking someone isn't just about the possibility of rejection, it's also about what happens if the feelings are reciprocated. A relationship brings with it expectations, responsibilities, and challenges. For someone who isn't sure they're ready for that level of commitment, the idea of a relationship, even with someone they truly like, can feel overwhelming. They might worry about whether they're capable of meeting your needs, balancing their own life with yours, or living up to the image you might have of them. This fear of not being able to sustain a relationship can make silence seem like the safer option, even if it means denying themselves the chance to be with you. And the layer of fear comes from the pressure to be good enough when someone admires you. They often put you on a pedestal, seeing you as someone extraordinary. While this admiration is a beautiful thing, it can also create a sense of inadequacy. They might start to question whether they measure up to your standards, or if they have what it takes to make you happy. This self-doubt can be paralyzing, especially if they feel they fall short in some way, whether it's in terms of looks, career success, emotional availability, or any other area. Instead of risking being seen as inadequate, they might choose to stay silent, convincing themselves that you deserve better than what they can offer. Cultural, societal expectations also play a role in fueling fear. Men in particular are often raised with the idea that they need to be strong, confident, and in control at all times. They're taught to suppress their emotions and avoid showing weakness, which can make the act of expressing interest in someone feel incredibly vulnerable. That liking someone means admitting that they have the power to affect you deeply. And that kind of emotional exposure can clash with the societal pressure to always appear self-assured. This internal conflict between wanting to connect and fearing the loss of control can lead to inaction, even when the feelings are real. Fear isn't always a conscious decision sometimes. It manifests as hesitation, avoidance, or overthinking. A person might not even realize they're being held back by fear. They might justify their silence by telling themselves it's not the right time, that you're out of their league, or that you wouldn't be interested anyway. These excuses are often rooted in deeper insecurities, but they provide a sense of comfort, a way to avoid facing the fear directly. It's by convincing themselves that silence is the better choice. They protect themselves from the discomfort of vulnerability while simultaneously depriving themselves of the connection they crave. In many cases, fear isn't about a lack of feelings, but rather an abundance of them. The stronger the emotions are, the higher the stakes feel, and the more they fear losing what they don't even have yet. This paradox can create a kind of emotional paralysis where their desire to be with you is matched by their fear of messing it up. They might replay scenarios in their mind, imagining all the ways things could go wrong. And those imagined outcomes can feel so real that they become a barrier to action. Instead of reaching out, they retreat, overwhelmed by the weight of their own emotions. The fear of judgment is another powerful force. Liking someone means opening yourself up to their scrutiny. And for someone who's self-conscious or uncertain about their own worth, that can be a terrifying prospect. They might worry about being judged for their appearance, their personality, or even their past. These fears can make them second-guess every interaction, questioning whether they're saying the right things, behaving the right way, or meeting expectations. This self-doubt can become so consuming that they decide it's better to stay silent than exposing themselves to judgment, even if that judgment is purely imagined. Finally, fear often feeds into a desire for control. Reaching out to someone you like requires surrendering to uncertainty. And for many people, that lack of control is deeply uncomfortable. Silence, on the other hand, allows them to maintain a sense of power over their emotions in the situation. By not reaching out, they avoid putting themselves in a position where the outcome is out of their hands. This need for control might seem like detachment, but it's actually a defense mechanism, a way to protect themselves from the unpredictability of human connection. Fear, in all its forms, can be an incredibly powerful force. It can shape behavior, influence decisions, and create barriers that prevent even the most genuine feelings from being expressed. When someone likes you but doesn't reach out, it's not necessarily a reflection of their lack of interest. More often, it's a reflection of their inner struggles, the fears they're wrestling with, the doubts they're trying to overcome, and the insecurities that hold them back. Recognizing this dynamic doesn't make their silence any less confusing or painful, but it can bring a sense of understanding and empathy to the situation, helping you see that their inaction isn't about your worth, but about their fears. When a man likes you but doesn't reach out, it's easy to feel confused, frustrated, or even hurt. You might wonder why someone who seems interested would choose to stay silent. The truth is, timing often plays a critical role in relationships, and it's possible that the timing in his life doesn't align with his feelings for you. Timing is not just about external circumstances, it's also about emotional readiness, personal priorities, and the journey someone is on. A man may genuinely like you but choose not to act because he recognizes that he's not in a place to give you the relationship you deserve. Understanding how timing affects his actions can shed light on what seems like a contradiction and provide clarity in the midst of uncertainty. Life is complex, and everyone is navigating their own set of challenges and responsibilities. For some men, the timing of their feelings for someone doesn't align with the realities of their life. They might be focused on building their career, handling family responsibilities, or recovering from past experiences. When a man feels overwhelmed by the demands of his life, he might hesitate to add the commitment of a relationship to the mix, no matter how much he likes you. His silence isn't a reflection of his feelings, but rather a reflection of his priorities at that moment. When a man really likes you, it's easy to assume that his feelings will naturally translate into action. You might think that if he feels strongly enough, he'll reach out, call, show up consistently. But the reality is far more complex. A man's silence or retreat doesn't always mean a lack of affection. More often than not, it stems from something deeper, something internal, self-doubt. Men are conditioned to believe they must have it all together before they can truly offer themselves to someone else. Society places this immense pressure on them to be providers, protectors, and leaders. They're told to carry their burdens quietly, fix their problems alone, and never show weakness. So when a man starts to care deeply about someone, it can awaken fears he may not even have realized were there. These fears aren't about you, they're about him. He begins to question whether he's good enough, stable enough, or accomplished enough to deserve your love and attention. It's magic for a moment the weight he carries. Perhaps he's dealing with career struggles, financial instability, or unresolved personal issues. Maybe he's haunted by past failures or carrying emotional scars from relationships that didn't work out. When he looks at you and sees someone amazing, someone he admires and values, it doesn't just make him heck, it also magnifies his insecurities. He starts to wonder if he has what it takes to stand beside you. And if the answer in his mind is no, his instinct might be to pull away. Not because he doesn't like you, but because he's afraid of letting you down. For many men, stepping back feels like the honorable thing to do. In their eyes, silence is a neglect of self-preservation. They don't want to burden you with their doubts or bring you into a situation where they feel inadequate. Instead of opening up and risking vulnerability, they retreat. It's not because they don't care, it's because they care so much that they're terrified of failing you. They fear that being in your life before they figured it out might hurt you more than help you. When a man steps back and chooses silence, it's easy to interpret his behavior as a lack of interest or respect. However, silence can sometimes be one of the deepest forms of consideration. It can be his way of respecting you, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. For many men, stepping away is a decision rooted in the belief that staying close might do more harm than good. Silence for them isn't about neglect, it's about trying to protect you from parts of himself he isn't ready to share. A man who truly cares about you doesn't want to offer you anything less than what he feels you deserve. When he knows he's struggling, whether it's with personal issues, emotional baggage, or even his own insecurities, he might see pulling away as the only responsible thing to do. In his mind, bringing his chaos into your life would be selfish. He doesn't want to weigh you down with his troubles, or expose you to the parts of his life that feel messy and unresolved. His silence, while painful for you, is his way of shielding you from what he believes could harm the connection you have. Men are often conditioned to view relationships as a space where they need to be provided protectors and problem solvers. They're taught to measure their worth in terms of what they can offer. If a man feels he can't meet the standards he set for himself, he might choose to step back rather than risk failing in your eyes. It's not that he doesn't see your worth, it's that he sees it so clearly that he fears falling short of it. He doesn't want to risk disappointing you or making you feel like you're settling for less than you deserve. For many men, silence is also tied to their struggle with vulnerability. Opening up about their fears, failures, or insecurities can feel like exposing a wound they've worked hard to hide. It requires them to strip away the armor they spent years building. And that's not an easy thing to do. By staying silent, a man avoids the discomfort of having to confront his own weaknesses in front of someone he deeply cares about. He convinces himself that it's better to keep a distance than to risk letting you see the parts of him he isn't proud of. This silence can be frustrating and even heartbreaking, especially when you know his feelings are real, but it's important to recognize that his retreat isn't about a lack of care. It's about his fear of not being enough and his desire to protect you from the weight of his internal struggles. He doesn't want to bring you into a space where you might feel burdened, overwhelmed. Instead, he steps back, hoping to spare you from the parts of his life that he feels could hurt you. A man's silence can also be his way of respecting your peace. He might look at your life and see someone who's thriving, someone who's strong and radiant. And in his mind, the last thing he wants to do is disrupt that. He doesn't want to be the reason you feel stressed, uncertain, or unhappy. Even if he misses you and thinks about you constantly, he convinces himself that staying silent is the better choice. It's his way of prioritizing your well-being over his own desires. This form of respect, while well-intentioned, can feel like rejection to the person on the receiving end. You might find yourself questioning your worth or wondering if you did something wrong. But his silence is rarely about you. It's about his internal dialogue, his fears, and his perception of what's best for you. He might not even realize that his silence is causing you pain. In his mind, he's making an honorable choice by stepping back, even if it means sacrificing his own happiness. It's also worth noting that men often process emotions differently than women. While women might seek connection and conversation as a way to work through their feelings, men are more likely to retreat and isolate themselves. This isn't because they don't care. It's because they've been conditioned to handle their emotions privately. Silence becomes their way of coping, their way of trying to sort through their thoughts and feelings without feeling exposed. When a man chooses silence, that's not necessarily a sign that he's moved on or stopped caring. It's often a reflection of his internal battle and the street struggle to reconcile his feelings with his fears. There's also a level of pride that can come into play. A man who cares about you doesn't want to appear weak or inadequate in your eyes. If he's facing challenges in his life, he might choose silence over risk. Risking your disappointment, your pity, or your judgment. Even if none of those things will actually happen, his fears convince him otherwise. In his silence, he believes he's protecting not just you, but also the image of himself he wants you to hold on to. Silence can also be a way of giving you space to make your own decisions. A man who respects you deeply might fear that his presence could influence you in ways that aren't fair. If he's not ready to give you his best, he might choose to step back and let you decide whether to want. It's his way of acknowledging that you deserve someone who can meet you where you are, even if he's not that person at the moment. Understanding that silence can be a form of respect doesn't make it any less painful. It's hard to feel value when someone you care about chooses to retreat instead of reaching out. But recognizing the intention behind the silence can bring a sense of clarity. It's not about you being unworthy, it's about him grappling with his own worthiness. His silence is his way of trying to protect you from the parts of himself he's still working to understand. At his core, his silence is an act of care, even if it doesn't feel that way. It's a way of saying, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want to give you less than what you deserve. While this approach might not align with what you want or need, it's important to see it for what it is, an attempt to respect you, even if it's misguided. When a man distances himself or chooses not to contact you, it's human nature to internalize someone's withdrawal and wonder if you did something wrong or if you're simply not enough. But more often than not, his silence is not about you. It's a reflection of where he is in his life, his mindset, and the internal battles he's fighting. It's crucial to understand that distance doesn't always mean disinterest, and his retreat doesn't automatically translate to your adequacy. It often signals a deeper, more complex struggle that has little to do with you. And men, like anyone else, have their own emotional landscapes to navigate. They deal with fears, insecurities, and doubts just as women do. But the way they process and express those emotions is often different. Society teaches men to mask vulnerability, to shoulder their burden silently, and to appear strong at all times. When a man feels overwhelmed, sure of himself, his instinct might be to pull away rather than face his emotions head on. This withdrawal can feel like rejection to you, but for him, it's a form of self-preservation. He's not running from you, he's running from the weight of his own fears and own uncertainties. Taking distance as rejection is an ease trap to fall into because silence can feel personal. When someone you care about stops reaching out, it seems to avoid you. It's hard not to wonder if they've lost interest or if you've done something to push them away. But their silence is rarely about you. It's about them trying to figure out their own path, their own priorities, and their own place in the world. Men often retreat when they feel they're not in a position to give you what you need or deserve. They may see their silence as a way of sparing you from their confusion or struggles, not realizing the hurt it can cause. It's also important to remember that men process emotions differently. While women might lean into connection and communication as a way to work through their feelings, men are more likely to retreat and isolate themselves. This isn't because they don't care, it's because they've been conditioned to handle their emotions internally. For many men, expressing vulnerability feels like an admission of weakness, and they fear being judged or understood. When a man distances himself, it's often his way of protecting both himself and the relationship. He might think that by stepping back, he's giving himself the space he needs to sort through his feelings without burdening you. Distance can also be a reflection of where a man is in his life. He might be dealing with personal challenges such as career uncertainty, financial struggles, or unresolved emotional wounds. When a man feels like his life is in chaos, the idea of adding a relationship to the mix can feel overwhelming. He might believe that pulling away is the responsible thing to do, especially if he doesn't want to drag you into his problems. His withdrawal is not a statement about your worth, it's a reflection of his own sense of inadequacy. And men also tend to retreat when they feel they're unable to meet your expectations. If he perceives you as someone who has your life together, someone confident, accomplished, and emotionally secure, he might question whether he can measure up. This self-doubt can create a barrier between you, even if his feelings for you are genuine. He might think he's doing you a favor by stepping back, sparing you the frustration of dealing with his insecurities. What he doesn't realize is that his silence can leave you feeling confused and hurt, wondering what wrong. Emotional readiness is another crucial aspect of timing. Liking someone requires more than just feelings. It requires being prepared to invest time, energy, and emotional vulnerability into a relationship. If a man isn't emotionally ready, he might hold back even if he feels a strong connection with you. Emotional readiness isn't something that can be forced or rushed. It's a process of healing, growth, and self-discovery. A man who has unresolved issues, whether from past relationships or personal struggles, might recognize that he needs to focus on himself before he can be a good partner. This decision to stay silent might be his way of protecting both of you from the complications that could arise from entering a relationship before he's truly ready. Timing also involves the ability to provide stability and security in a relationship. Men often feel a sense of responsibility to be providers and protectors, whether emotionally, financially, or otherwise. If a man perceives that he's not in a position to offer you the stability you deserve, he might choose to step back, even if it hurts him to do so. This isn't about him doubting your ability to support yourself or question your independence. It's about his own standards and expectations for himself. He might believe that pursuing a relationship without being in a stable place could lead to frustration, misunderstandings, or unmet needs, and he might choose silence over risking those new outcomes. The journey of self-discovery also plays a significant role in timing. Everyone goes through periods of introspection and growth. And during these times, relationships can feel like an added pressure rather than a source of joy. And the man who is trying to figure out who he is, what he wants, and where he's going might hesitate to involve someone else in his life until he feels more certain about his path. This hesitation isn't about you, it's about his need to focus inward and ensure that he's building a life that aligns with his values and goals. That liking you might actually motivate him to take this time for himself, knowing that he wants to approach a potential relationship with clarity, confidence. There's also the reality that some men feel wasting your time. If a man senses that the timing in his life isn't right, he might choose to stay silent rather than start something he's unsure he can sustain. This decision can be frustrating, especially if you feel like you're ready and willing to take that lead. However, his silence might stem from a place of respect and consideration. He might believe this comeback is better choice, even if it means letting go of something he deeply wants. His actions or lack thereof are not a rejection of you, but an acknowledgement of his own limitations at that moment. The influence of societal and cultural pressures also intersects with timing. Men often feel the weight of expectations to have their lives in order before pursuing a serious relationship. These pressures can include financial stability, career success, or achieving certain milestones. A man who feels he hasn't reached these benchmarks might hold himself back from pursuing a relationship, even if his feelings for you are genuine. His silence might be his way of coping with the internal conflict between his emotions and the expectations he feels obligated to meet. He might believe that waiting until he's achieved certain goals is the responsible thing to do, even if it means missing out on the connection he feels with you. The fear of missing out on opportunities can also play into timing. A man who is deeply focused on his career, education, or other personal ambitions might feel torn between pursuing a relationship and dedicating himself fully to his goals. He might worry that trying to balance both would lead to compromises he's not ready to make. This doesn't mean he values you any less. It means he's prioritizing what he believes is necessary for his future. His silence might be his way of avoiding the difficult conversation about why he's not ready, choosing instead to wait until he feels he can give you the attention and commitment you deserve. Timing isn't just about the present, it's also about the future. A man who likes you might be thinking ahead, considering whether he sees a long-term relationship with you. If he has doubts about whether he can meet your needs or align his life with yours, he might hesitate to reach out. His silence might be his way of avoiding leading you on or creating a situation where either you ends up hurt. While this approach can feel like rejection, it's often driven by a desire to be honest with himself and with you about what he can offer. Ultimately, timing is a complex interplay of emotions, circumstances, and priorities. It's not always something that can be controlled or predicted. A man might genuinely like you, but recognize that the timing isn't right for reasons that have nothing to do with you. His silence might be his way of honoring where he is in his life, even if it means risking losing the connection he feels with you. Recognizing this dynamic can help you see his actions or inactions in a new light, allowing you to approach the situation with empathy and understanding rather than frustration or self-doubt. Sometimes liking someone deeply isn't enough to overcome the obstacle of timing, and that's the truth that both people must navigate with grace.